Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the New Hampshire Business Show. My name is Chris Pastrana, and today we're here with Johnathan West of
Hello.
AeVitas. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So let's get into this a little bit. Tell me a little bit about yourself and the business.
So I've been doing IT support for 17 years. I've worked for a bunch of MSPs and a couple of different industries, healthcare, manufacturing, over the course of time. And then a couple of years ago, I decided that it was time for me to go into business for myself. So I just joined a bunch of chambers of commerce and started developing a customer base. I'm also a member of a B&I group in Wyndham.
Okay.
And just through word of mouth and referrals, I got my base clientele. I do direct technology support for executives, so mostly I've got the owner of a company who calls me when they need some kind of IT support. What makes me different is, unlike most IT companies that have like a monthly contract fee with like an annual or tri-annual contract, I do everything based on retainer. So basically, somebody buys a block of hours for me. They last forever. They use them at their whim, whether we determine a schedule of use or they just call me when they need help. And then when their retainer hours are up, they re-up their hours if they want to continue to work with me. No contract, no obligation. And I've got a couple of offices, doctors, dentist offices, a small manufacturing facility, a limousine service with 60 vehicles.
Nice.
And I do all the technology questions and research and implementation for these companies. So if they need a new computer, if they need new cables installed, if they want to change an aspect of their network, whether it's adding Wi-Fi or making it more secure or including some kind of data backup solution. I train their staff. I help them come up with a plan on how to implement it, roll it out to the operations of their company. And it's been pretty good. About 2 years now that I've been doing it.
Yeah.
And I was really excited to get into business for myself, and things have been really great.
Yeah. So why the step into entrepreneurship? Because that's a big step for a lot of people. When you go from working for someone and then you're like, oh, I'm doing it for myself.
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes into that decision. So kind of what was that about?
So my last couple of not self-employment gigs, I worked for a company for a year or 2 years, kind of brought their technology up to a self-sustaining level, and then they decided that they didn't need IT services anymore, and so I moved on to the next one. And this is kind of normal for the industry. But I decided that it wasn't for me. I'm a millennial by age, but I've got a little bit of that previous generation in me. Like, I wanted to work at a place, be there for a long time, work my way up the chain, you know what I mean? But you just can't do that anymore in today's employment environment. And so the last time that I, got a company to self-sufficiency and left, I decided, no more of this 1 year, 2 year hopping place. I can consult for these companies that I'm working for. And it can be as temporary or as permanent a basis as they want. They don't need to bring me on as an employee. I don't need to be there full time. They don't need to worry about my benefits. A lot of companies, especially if they're not in the IT segment, they just want a guy that they can call when they've got a question. Hey, is this legit? Is this email something I need to worry about? I heard about this technology. What's your opinion? They want like a Google in a person. And they want somebody who understands what their business is leveraging. And what happens today with these contract IT companies is, you're paying a guy $750 a month. You don't ever call him. He never calls you unless some emergency happens.
Yeah.
And then when that emergency happens, you got to send in an email, call an 800 number. You get some guy on the phone or response via an email, person who has no idea about who you are, what your business is.
Yeah.
They're scurrying through some kind of documentation to figure out, okay, what technologies do we support, do we not support for this particular client? I don't do any of that stuff. If I installed it, if I didn't install it, if it's a technology that I'm familiar with or something that I'm going to have to do some self-education to support you for, I get involved. I understand the business technology, and I make sure that I can support it no matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's something from 15 years ago that nobody's manufacturing anymore.
Yeah.
There's information out there, and I learn it. I teach it to them so that they're able to kind of self-sustain, and they only need to call me in when they really need help.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, you just brought up a point that's pretty interesting, because the changes in technology from the last 15 years, that's a lot.
It is.
Some people may not think that's a big change, but 15 years ago, we didn't even really have cell phones yet.
Yep.
That was because I'm 31 now, so I get what you mean. I'm kind of on like the front
cusp.
end of what's a millennial,
Yeah.
right? So I'm kind of, I don't know, old school millennial, whatever. But that's a big change because when I was growing up, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have any of the technology we do now.
Yeah,
And all
pay phones and answering machines.
My dad had a pager.
Yep,
Yep. So like, and we still had one of those rotary phones for fun. But jump 15 years, that's a huge amount of technology and variations and all stuff. So that's pretty cool to be able to kind of work within that with that field. Yeah.
And I mean, the greatest thing, like the best experiences I have are 90% of what I do is educating. So when I sit down with a guy who's been running his tax preparation business for 30 years, and it's mostly on paper, he's got like one application that's like government based, and he's just been operating that way, and everything's going great. And I run into him, and he and I have a conversation. I talk about what I could do to make his job more efficient. You don't need to spend 60 hours doing data entry and all this stuff. There's tools and apps and features that you can use to kind of make things a little more efficient. Take 5 hours training him on how to use the programs he's already got more efficiently.
Yeah.
This feature that came out 5 years ago, but he's kind of operating the program from the 1999 version in his mind, so none of the new features he's even aware of, Outlook, Word, just basic stuff. A 3 to 5 hour session, and this guy is like, he's amazed. He's like ready to use Facebook and all this kind of stuff. My mother, she's starting an acupuncture business. But she's in her 60s, and she's used to the concept of like brick and mortar.
Yeah.
She used to make like soaps and lotions and just sell them in little stores and stuff, gift shops and stuff. So now she's doing this acupuncture business, and she's like, spent the last 5 years getting educated and certified and going through all this rigmarole to get it started.
Yeah.
And she's got no idea like how to grow a customer base, So I just spent an hour and a half at her house showing her how to use like Facebook groups, how you post to different groups so that people can, and post recommendation responses and all the stuff that Facebook is doing now to cause interaction between people, like how to utilize it as business.
Yeah.
And she was astounded, and she picked it up right away, and now she's posted like every day, and I'm like, way to go, Mom,
That's funny.
And that's what I do. I just I educate people and try to make it so that the work that they do, the lives that they live, whether it's their personal life or their business life, they're taking advantage of everything that's available to them.
Yeah.
So.
That's pretty cool. So, must be a little bit of stress in there, though, because if businesses are relying on you for these recommendations and this knowledge, a little bit of stress there to, one, make good recommendations, and then kind of be up to time, and I guess just have that knowledge and information. That could be kind of...
I mean, for some, maybe. It comes, I guess, with being like a nerd. I started building computers when I was 8 years old.
Yeah.
I was doing, programming at 11, ad hoc networking before Windows 98 SE came out, so networks weren't really a thing in the U.S. yet.
Yeah.
When Wi-Fi technology first hit the scene before it was really out in the consumer market, I was building little Wi-Fi nodes at home for my family to use, and it was crazy futuristic technology, so it's just, I stay ahead of the curve when it comes to the knowledge base of the technology that I use because it's just part of my culture. I'm constantly educating myself. I was partially homeschooled throughout my high school years. So I developed that self-discipline and kind of the drive to just constantly want to be on top of my game when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah.
And, because I'm a nerd and I love technology, and I literally get that, like, heart-pounding excitement when I'm, like, learning about some new aspect, or, like, when multi-threading came out in CPUs, and I was, like, researching, like, the physical architecture of the chip and how multi-threading functions. It was, like, awesome. Like, So, obviously, I try to keep it dumbed down for the audience that I work with, but... me, I've got two brothers who are also in the technology field.
Yeah.
One's a coder, one's a hardware guy, kind of a mix of both. And we're all, like, crazy nerds together, we go to each other's houses. We've got, like, business class networks in our houses that we use just for fun.
Yeah, that's funny.
So, it doesn't really get stressful. I think the biggest stress is if I'm dealing with someone who gets easily frustrated with the technology. That can be stressful, and I've got to manage to take a step back, get the person to take a breather, and kind of try to re-engage at, like, a neutral level. Which it happens, but
yeah, because I've seen that a few times, because I'm not good with technology, so. But even from where I am, where I'm not great at it, but I kind of understand the basics of it, talking to someone who knows nothing can be very frustrating. So I can only imagine if it's like your passion and you're like, why do you not get this?
Oh, yeah.
Because a lot of, older entrepreneurs, they've worked in corporate for their entire existence, right? And then they're like, okay, I retired. I want to start a business. How do I use the internet? How do I implement some technology? And you're like, whew, okay, let's... Whew. And then, so I can understand that being frustrating.
Yeah,
so.
But a lot of times... It just comes down to that education piece again, because if I spend an hour and kind of get the person to understand the basics, because all programs kind of come down to just, like, basic fundamentals, but like how they operate. And if that fundamental information clicks in your mind, everything else just, it's suddenly so much easier, and so it's just getting to that one spot, and then they're pretty good going after that.
Yeah. I definitely I agree with you there. Way different topic, but I used to dance. So I used to teach people how to dance, as like Latin, ballroom, all that stuff.
Me too.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
So you will understand this.
Yeah, I'm 50% Cuban, so it's kind of like in my blood.
Oh, so am I. That's really funny.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's actually really funny. So where's I going with this? So you understand, once you learn the basics, everyone's like, oh, I don't know how to dance. And I'm like, well, fine, we'll teach you the steps.
Right.
And then once you learn the steps, you learn, like, kind of your balance, and you learn the little pieces, and all of a sudden, dancing just becomes so much easier.
Oh, yeah, and people want to flourish and all.
Yeah, and then you start, like, you're not following steps anymore, you're dancing, you're doing things, and you're like, oh, let's try this, and that didn't work, so let's laugh about it and do something else, So it's, I think, kind of a similar idea there.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of life, it comes down to just mastering the fundamentals, and people, once you click in this one thing, it makes that aspect of life so much easier, and I feel like, I mean, just, going from adolescence to adulthood, there are just a couple of things that click. When you get to the point where you have children, you're kind of like raising children, the whole lifestyle change that brings, there are things that just, at a moment, you look back and you're like, I don't know when that clicked, but it did. And, like, I'm living this life as an adult with a child of my own, and, and, our age, right? You're 31, I'm 34. We're just, like, at that mark where it's kind of like... this is kind of amazing. You know?
Yeah.
So
that's pretty good. So where are you looking to take everything in the future?
So in 2018, consulting and providing technology services, is where I started. And I love doing that, but I wanted to do something that was a little more permanent. And so I partnered with a company in Connecticut and a software developer in New York. Came up with this platform that I call Data Horizon.
Okay.
Basically, it's a physical box that I put in your office, and I put a piece of software in your computer. So you've got this computer here. Let's say this is the computer that you run your whole business on. It's got all your video files, all your client information, all your CRM information. if you're a tax preparer, there's a bunch of programs related to your business that all sits on a computer. A lot of companies have a server in their office, and multiple people are accessing a database of information on that singular server that sits in their office. And so, I do a lot of maintenance support for that kind of hardware. Update the operating system, make sure they've got antivirus, do the scans, clean it up, disk fragmentation, all that kind of stuff. But what I noticed was that a lot of companies, when it comes to data backup or disaster recovery, they either have nothing in place. Like, basically, if you're a company with 50 or fewer employees, there's like a cost benefit analysis that you have to take into account about, do I put in all these redundancies and have cloud backup and all this kind of stuff? And a lot of them choose not to, just the cost of benefit isn't there. The question that they ask themselves, like, can I be down for 24 hours? Like, how much money do I lose if I'm down for 24 hours?
Yeah.
And so I developed this product. Basically, it does data backup for a server, a computer, or everything in the office. It's got a scale. But it also does local and cloud backup and virtualization.
Okay.
So basically, you've got that server. Everybody's operating. If that server breaks, everybody's going to go home until that server's fixed again, right? Because everybody needs to operate on that program. My box sitting next to that server is constantly watching that server. New data getting created, it copies over to that device. And if that server stops functioning, it just takes the click of a button, and 6 seconds later, that box is now your server. On the network, all the links on your network, believe that your server's still up, even though the server actually went down. My machine is now your server. And so people can keep on operating. You can call the tech guy, get that server fixed, and then, revert it once everything is, back up and running, and none of your employees will ever notice that there was even any downtime, This comes into play in a lot of different ways because, especially with like all the natural disasters that have been going on around the country. So, fire, flood, ransomware attack, on your data, all that stuff. The traditional methods for preventing are only so limited. Like a lot of people have Carbonite, or a similar type of data backup solution. Copies your files into a folder on the internet for $50 a year, which is great if you only need your files, right?
Yeah.
But if you're running a database, it's based on an application, and so you've got the files for that database, but you got to rebuild your server, you got to install that application again, then you got to load that data back into the application to get it ready, and God knows how long that takes.
It takes a while.
Right. Yeah. So my system, because it does file and image level backup, all of that is negated. It basically every 30 minutes it captures everything. So the most data you could ever lose on my platform is the last 30 minutes of interaction. If 29 minutes ago ransomware started infesting your computer, you're going to go to the 30-minute segment prior to that infection. But my system automatically detects and stops backing up when ransomware gets in the system. Regular file backup, even cloud-based solutions don't do that. So, like, your Carbonite backup can get infected by ransomware. And there are a lot of, products and services out there. But I think bringing it all into one product. There's a physical box, it's local, it's in the cloud. I've got 9 data centers on 6 continents that duplicate all of your data. So, like, if the internet goes down on the East Coast, like what happened back in 2006, I can spin up the server in El Paso, and all the applications and services are up and running, whether you have access to the internet or not, whether your building has access to the internet or not.
Pretty cool.
Even if my physical device gets burnt up in the fire, because it is constantly sending a stream of incremental data back to the cloud, I can spin up your entire environment in the cloud as an immediate response to some kind of disaster. So it just covers all the basis for disaster recovery and business continuity solutions. And it's pretty inexpensive compared to what's available out there. You've got these really cheap options that have limitations.
Yeah.
You have really expensive options because basically it's have a copy of every single piece of hardware that you own, redundancy. And that can be really expensive. This kind of sits in the middle. You can have one device be redundant for all your devices.
Yeah.
And it does all the backup all in one service.
Yeah.
So, and it's just one device, one simple monthly license fee, and that comes with my support for the products that are being backed up on that. So if you've got a server and I'm backing up your server, I do the support for your server on top of you having bought my box.
Cool.
So,
and
that's the new thing that I'm going towards. I kind of launched it September 27th. I've got a decent amount of bites on it. 2 or 3 clients already on the platform. And I'm just working on getting awareness out on that product line. Because once people know about it, I think people will be interested, especially home-based businesses. You've got QuickBooks, you've got all your client information, probably all your tax forms from the last decade, all on that one computer. And you think, I've got the backup on the drive and all that kind of stuff. But making it so that in 6 seconds, your whole business and your whole life continues to operate, it's a little bit better than what's out there right now. So that's what I've been doing.
That's pretty cool. That's impressive.
A little long-winded, I know.
No, that was perfectly fine. A lot of the entrepreneurs and business owners that listen to this are going to find that interesting. Because even I was like, oh, that'd be great for my other business.
Right. It's just, and people don't think about it until they hear about it for that first time. And because ransomware is such a thing now, basically 60% of all businesses will experience a ransomware attack in the next 2 years. In 2016, it went from in 2016 a ransomware attack happening every 2 minutes. Now one happens in the United States every 20 seconds. So it's now a matter of when, not if. And so the average 10-employee business will save $89,000 in implementing a recovery solution to their business when they have this system in place. That's the basic calculation that the average business saves $89,000 a year.
It's pretty good.
Yeah,
that's huge.
and it costs nowhere near that much. So
that's good. I like that. So people that want to learn a little more about all of this, what do they reach out to?
So I've got a website, AeVitasTech.com. There's a lot of information on my Facebook, Consult AeVitas, facebook.com/Consult AeVitas. Or they can call me direct. Basically all my clients and service individuals that I work with, they get my cell phone number. They call me direct. There's no 800 line. There's no waiting. I'm available 24/7. So, if someone wanted to reach out to me, my number is 603-793-1454. Text or call, I can explain anything that I talked about here or any technology that they might be interested in. And I always do, initial free consulting up to an hour. I'll answer some basic questions that you have. You've Googled it, seems a little confusing. Call me, I'll answer your question. No charge, and the next time you're looking to upgrade your Wi-Fi, maybe you'll call me, And so the website has a ton of information on there as well, a lot of documentation on there, PDFs you can download with a lot of external information. And then the Facebook, I post 3 times a day on the Facebook with external resources with information about, data backup, business continuity, ransomware protection, all the stuff that I talked about. Because I want to make sure that people are educated, and even if they're not on my platform using my service, I'd rather they've got something than nothing. So I put a lot of information out there on the Facebook to make sure that people are up to speed.
Right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay. So everyone, thank you so much for watching. Everyone be good and definitely reach out and see how they can essentially help protect your business.